Long ago, across the sea, in the island of Java in Indonesia, there lived a young girl. Her name was Senggutru. Senggutru lived with her mother in a little house right at the edge of the forest. They were poor, but they were happy together. Or at least, they would have been happy, if not for the terrible giant who lived in the forest. Now, every morning, the first thing that Senggutru did, as soon as she woke up, was to reach for her comb. You see, she was very proud of her hair. It was long and black and reached way down past her waist. And she would comb and comb and comb her hair until it was smooth and shiny. And then she would tie it up with a special hairpin. Now, if you'd seen that hairpin, you would have said to yourself, what's so special about that? But you see, it was special to Senggutru, for her father had carved it for her himself and given it to her as a present. It was the only present she had ever received. And her father had died 2 years before. And so she wore that hairpin every day to remember him by. Now, when she was dressed and her hair up, she and her mother would go out into the forest, each with a basket on their back. Senggutru would look for wood that had fallen from the trees and was nice and dry so that they could use it to light their stove. Senggutru's mother searched the forest floor looking for special herbs that could be used as medicine. These were what she sold in the market, so they had enough money to eat and have clothes to wear. When both the baskets were full, they would go back into the house. Senggutru's mother would light the stove, and then she would cook their breakfast. For breakfast, they had a very small pot of plain brown rice. That was all they could afford to eat. But as well as that small pot of plain brown rice, Senggutru's mother made something else. She took a big iron pot and placed it on the stove. And into that pot, she squeezed the freshest coconut milk. She shaved in the sweetest gula melaka, and she sprinkled in the finest white rice flour. And then she stirred and stirred and stirred to make sweet coconut porridge. But Senggutru and her mother never even got 1 spoonful of that porridge. For you see, the porridge was for the giant's lunch. Senggutru's mother knew very well if she didn't give the giant his lunch every day, he might eat Senggutru instead. Now, when the porridge was nicely bubbling on the stove, Senggutru's mother took her basket of herbs and set off for market. She left Senggutru at home. Senggutru, she washed the dishes, she swept the floor, she washed the clothes, and when all the work was done, she went out to play. But she always stayed close to the house, and she never went into the forest. And she always kept one ear open, listening for the giant. Round about mid-morning, she would hear him coming. Boom, 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 boom. As soon as she knew he was coming, she dashed into the house. She got the pot of porridge. She carried it out, put it on the ground, dashed up into the house again, shut the door, bolted the door, and hid under a table. Very soon, the giant would be at the door, and with one huge finger he would knock. Tock, tock, tock. Senggutru, where are you? In the house. And where's your mother? At the market. And where's my porridge? In the pot. And the giant would lift the lid off of the pot, take the pot up to his mouth and slurp the porridge down in one huge mouthful. Then he put the pot back down on the ground and stomped off back down the forest path to his home. Boom, 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 boom. This happened every day. But one day, things were a bit different. Senggutru's mother came back from the market looking very worried. She had hardly sold any of her herbs. She only had enough money to buy the rice flour, the coconut milk and the gula melaka for the giant's porridge. There was no money for rice for themselves, or vegetables, or fish, or anything to eat. And so that night they went hungry. And there was no breakfast the next morning. And the same happened the next night, and the next night, and the next night. Senggutru and her mother were starving. Now on this morning, Senggutru's mother got up first, and she looked down at her daughter, and she thought, she's sleeping peacefully. When she wakes up, she'll be hungry. I'll just let her sleep. And so Senggutru's mother took 2 baskets into the forest, and she filled one with firewood and one with herbs. And then very quietly she made the giant's porridge. And when all was ready, she gently shook Senggutru on the shoulder. Senggutru, I'm going now. Senggutru got up. Her mother had done the work alone. Her mother was just as hungry and weak as she was. She would have to get up and do the housework. And she reached for her comb, and she combed out her hair, and she tied her hair up with her hairpin. But she was so weak from hunger that all she could do was flop back down on her sleeping mat again. She had no strength to get up to do the housework. And as she lay there, she smelt the sweet coconut porridge bubbling on the stove. It smelt so good. Surely the giant wouldn't miss just 1 spoonful. The moment the thought was in her head, she was reaching for the spoon. She dipped it in the porridge. It was so good. It was so good that 1 spoonful was not enough. She took another and another and another, and before she knew it, she had eaten 1/4 of the pot. Just at that moment, she heard the giant's footsteps coming down the forest path. Boom, 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 boom. She quickly smoothed over the top of the porridge. She put on the lid. She picked it up. She ran out the door. She put it on the ground. She ran back in. She shut the door. She bolted the door, and she hid, trembling, under the table. Very soon, the giant was at the door. Toc, toc, toc. Senggutru, where are you? In the house. And where's your mother? At the market. And where's my porridge? In the pot. The giant lifted the lid off the pot, carried it up, and stopped. This pot is not full! And he flung it away, scattering porridge all over the ground. And then with 1 huge fist, he smashed through the door and felt around and felt around until he found Senggutru under the table. He pulled her out, threw her high in the air, and swallowed her whole. And then he walked back down the forest path to his home. Boom, 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 boom. Now, Senggutru was still alive. She had been swallowed whole, but she was in the giant's stomach, and it was dark and smelly and horrible in there, and she was so frightened she did not know what to do. She closed her eyes, and she prayed. And as she prayed, in her mind, she saw her father's face. She saw her father's face, and she remembered her hairpin. She pulled the hairpin out of her hair, and she poked the giant in the stomach. "Ow! Oh!" shouted the giant. "Poke, poke, poke! Ah! Oh! Oh! Poke, poke, poke! Oh! Oh!" The giant ran, blinded with pain. He ran down the forest path. He tripped over a tree root. He fell. He knocked his head on a stone, and lay down dead. But Senggutru was still trapped inside his stomach. Now, just about that time, Senggutru's mother was coming back from the market, and today had been different. She had sold all of her herbs, and then she had a promise of a job, and she was so happy. She sang as she walked. She had bought fish and vegetables and rice and even a little paper cone of peanuts as a special treat for Senggutru. But she stopped smiling and singing when she saw the smashed-in door and the porridge scattered on the ground. She knew what had happened, and she ran down the forest path towards the giant's home. "Senggutru, where are you? Senggutru, where are you?" And then she saw the giant lying dead on the ground. "Senggutru, where are you?" And very faintly, from inside the giant's stomach, she heard, "In here." Now, a mother's love is a very powerful thing. And that day it gave Senggutru's mother great strength. She reached into a tree and she wrenched off a tree branch. She climbed onto the giant and she prized open his jaws. And then she pushed that tree branch down the giant's throat. And she pulled and she pulled and she pulled her daughter out, weak and trembling, but still alive. And from that day on, Senggutru and her mother lived in peace and harmony. And every morning for breakfast, they had sweet coconut porridge.